This podcast, I sat down with Paul Bieker. Paul is one of the key designers of the F50. He was there from the very beginning back in 2010 when the AC50 was first designed. We chatted about the development of the F50, how he interacts with athletes, some of those design tweaks that are coming down the pipeline. It was an awesome chat. Enjoy. Welcome back to One on One. I'm Lisa Darmanin, and today I'm joined by one of the men who has been instrumental into designing the F50, Paul Bieker. Paul, thanks for coming to have a chat.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah.
Now, take me back to a time where you were involved with Oracle Team USA and you were designing what we now know as a foiling catamaran.
Yeah, so that was after the AC72 America's Cup, and we we won that by the skin of our teeth. So then we were in the position of figuring out what the next America's Cup was going to be, and we spent a fair amount of time thinking about what size the boat could be, and we pretty quickly realized that you didn't have to be, in a foiling boat, you didn't have to be 72 feet to go fast.
Go fast, yeah.
A 50-footer would be just as fast. So basically, these boats we picked because they're kind of the minimum size foiling catamaran that we can do and fit the people in the hulls.
Yeah.
Like if we went much smaller than that,
Be too tight.
too tight, the grinders would hit their elbows on the side of the boat. So that's a simple way it got
That's
sized.
how it got to 50-foot catamaran.
Yeah.
And then I guess obviously you had the 72-foot foiling catamaran and you were designing this new structure. The wing structure already existed. But I guess, how did all that sort of come together? I guess people listening might not know how you design a boat. Well, what's sort of a process for a naval architect?
You know, especially in that America's Cup environment, it's kind of a team process. But my responsibility was kind of figuring out the basic shape of the boat, like how long would it be, how wide would we make it?
Yeah.
You know, where would the wing go on the boat? Where should the foils go on the boat? And then, you know, once that gets defined, then we start figuring out the structure and, you know, the details.
How to build it.
And the shape. You know, like one of the funny things you don't think about with these boats is what you can see from different positions in the boat. Like, you know, the helmsman needs to see the bow, and so that actually determines kind of the shape of the beams and the pod, you know, lines of sight.
So I guess there's a few things that go into designing a boat. Obviously, just making something that's really optimal. But as you said, I guess just like the logistics on board for everybody is a big thing. And then obviously the aerodynamics, I guess, is another big checkbox.
The aerodynamics is a big one, and the structural trade-off between, you know, if you make things slender, then they generally get heavier. You know, slender is low drag for the aerodynamics, but it gets heavy. And so there's all these trade-offs.
And when you change one thing on the boat or in the design process, do you then have to see how that filters down across everything else?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a big thing that's happening right now as we've changed over to T-foils. You know, some of the ways that it's changed the boat were expected, and other ways, you know, not expected. So it's a moving target.
I guess, you know, touching on that, from when you first sort of came up with the idea of the AC50, which is now the F50, how much has the boat evolved from, I guess, those early days?
Well, it's evolved a lot. What's kind of funny is when we were first doing these boats, I wanted to make them T-foils.
Oh, you're kidding.
In the beginning. No, I can show you some of my original drawings.
Oh, that's amazing.
Were T-foils, but I was pretty sure that a human couldn't control a T-foil.
Yeah, okay.
You know, these boats are all controlled, the ride height is controlled manually by the humans. And from the sailing we did on the 72, we thought that the L-foils, you know, we knew a human could control the boat. Yeah. Because they have some sort of natural intrinsic stability.
Yeah, okay.
Which the T-foils don't have.
Yeah.
But what happened is, you know, as is pretty typical in life, like what's hard to sail is oftentimes faster.
Yeah.
And so even with the L-foils, we went towards configurations that were less and less stable.
Yeah, okay.
So by the time we sailed the America's Cup, in Bermuda, we were sailing with foils that weren't much less stable than T-foils.
So you could have gone there in the first place.
We could have gone there in the first place, and it's, you know.
It's taken a decade, but we finally got there.
Yeah, it is about 10 years, yeah.
I guess that's kind of an interesting point. So obviously with the F50 that we know today at SailGP, it's all one design, they're all exactly the same. In the cut world that you were in, the rules were tight, but how, I guess, interesting has it been as a naval architect, as a designer, to be able to implement systems to create a design that you think will push the boat faster and harder?
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, the open part of the America's Cup, where, you know, you're free to make different foil shapes, you know, for different boats, you know, that's interesting. But you know, what makes this environment super interesting is that you have, you know, 12 really highly skilled teams trying to crack the same problems, you know, trying to figure out the boats. So they actually push us pretty hard on systems, like, oh, you know,
they're always calling you like,
yeah,
we need this.
Yeah. The board drops are too slow, or we need to be able to adjust this more accurately. And so I feel like in this environment, we're getting a lot more refined than you would in an America's Cup environment.
Way more feedback with way more athletes.
With a lot more
or
variety.
Positive feedback, or
What do you think?
Who gives you the most feedback? You can, or does everyone love to have a chat?
Yeah, I get a fair amount of feedback. Yeah.
Does anyone come to you for advice? Obviously, like
yeah. And we try to be pretty open with that. You know, if somebody asks a question, we answer it. And
I guess that's the thing with all the shared data. It's like there are no secrets here, right?
Yeah. And I think, you know, that's neat. Like, you can see the guys or the people learning really quickly on the water, you know, like even from one day to the next, you can see the way they sail change. So that's exciting.
It's really cool. I guess obviously the jump to T-foils has been coming for a while, but what was the process like of, obviously, you know, that vision was there for you, but then creating them, testing them, and then now implementing them? What was that sort of process like?
It's kind of a long process.
It's not an overnight job, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, and like anything in the boats, it's, like I said before, it's trade-offs. You know, there's a lot of trade-offs. But I think, you know, where we landed, you know, what we call the heavy air board is really kind of a good all-purpose board, takes us across the range of conditions pretty well.
Yeah.
And then the board we're sailing with today, the light air board, is really pretty specialized to the bottom end of the spectrum.
The T is huge.
But it's super neat to see them, like with these foils, the boats can glide for longer than I expected. You know,
that's really cool.
And I think that's neat in light air.
And so when you change something like that, like I know that there's so many softwares and systems that can be updated quicker than something structural like a T-foil. Yeah. I guess until they go sailing, you don't really know what sort of limiters to put in place. So for people that don't know, I guess maybe describe, if you can, describe like how the systems support the pushing the design.
Well, one of the big things that we did on these boats in the first place was that they're fully fly-by-wire. You know, that there's no mechanical linkages on the boat. Everything, you know, the tie between the controls and what happens on the boat is all electronics and programming in between it. So, you know, when you go sailing and you know, the crew complains about you know, the drops are too slow or whatnot, it's really a programming thing that, you know, so we can adjust it on the water.
Yeah. In real time, they say
in real time.
This is a problem, and then people in the background are redoing the system.
Yeah, and that's been pretty amazing to me, to be able to, you know, in one day on the water, you can change a whole lot of things about how the boat operates, you know, according to your feedback from the crew.
And how much does that change, I guess, across conditions as well?
A lot, and it's a learning process. You know, it's like in Sassnitz, we went out, you know, with a little bit too much wind with the light air rudder elevators, and the settings that we had allowed a little bit more rudder differential than we could, and you know.
We saw what happened.
And we saw what happened.
I guess, what was your reaction when you saw that? Were you like, I know what has happened, or were you like, were you waiting for the report, or you know, how did you feel?
It usually takes a few hours before you figure it out.
Like, I think this is when I need to see the data. Is that what goes on?
Yeah. Usually your first impression is oftentimes not
quite right.
correct. Yeah.
I guess from there, obviously, there's been systems put in place, like limiting, I guess, the twist of the boat. But the boats still are able to configure in such a way that they can still foil fast.
Yeah. Well, here's an example. Like after Sassnitz, we had an issue there with boards the new board developing too much downforce in a drop, and so we adjusted the programming to sort of reduce that.
Yeah.
But then the guys are complaining that the boards are not going down fast enough when they drop them, so we're kind of dialing it
trying
in.
to find that number.
And we're realizing that it changes with wind strength, so it's all.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing is, so to drop a board, for people that don't know, obviously it's got to hit the water, it's got to pierce the water and pull down, but you don't want to pull down so much that you twist the boat. So it's trying to find that balance.
Yeah. It's
a tough one.
It is a tough one, yeah. And the thing there is that, like, when you drop it and you get more downforce on the board, it actually twists the boat in a way that gives it more negative angle of attack.
It's exponential.
It's exponential. It's a little bit of a sketchy situation.
You're like trying to find the perfect number, right?
But when it goes bad, it goes
really
real bad. Yeah.
It's pretty cool, like, I guess, to be able to develop so fast and to see how much, foiling has developed, how much the F50 has developed. But I guess you're always looking forward, I guess, as the designer of what's next. I know that there's been some wing testing. Have you been involved in that as well? Yeah.
We just had a new version of the light air wing. The initial light air wing was the parallel sections. The way we go from change wing sizes is we have these parallel sections on the wing that we can take out or add in.
They're like building blocks.
Yeah, like building blocks. And our all-purpose wing is one section, a parallel section in, and our light air wing is two parallel sections in. And the previous light air wing, the two parallel sections were the same length, which made a very
big
tall wing, which with the T-foils would have been...
It's just too big, too much power.
Yeah, the T-foils would have made that a pretty marginal configuration. So we have a new medium length parallel section, and so we tested that in the light air wings for the first time on Friday.
How are you feeling about that? You think it's going to go in the right direction?
I don't think you'd want to go bigger.
So 27 and a half.
Yeah, 27 and a half meters.
It's potentially a new onboarding for SailGP.
Yeah, and I think that in combination with these new light air foils, I think is about as good as we can do in light air.
I guess it's amazing when you were there at the beginning of these foiling beasts. Would you ever imagine that these boats would be foiling around in such light winds?
No, I wished we had these. If we'd had these boats in the America's Cup in Bermuda, it would have been a different story.
A different story for Oracle Team USA. Beyond that, do you have any other secrets you can tell us? Any ideas you've got in the back of your mind, or you're always just trying to see sort of where the fleet goes and what the athlete feedback is?
Yeah, well, there's two aspects of this job, and one is thinking ahead to what can we do next, and the other one is just keeping the
boats going
together
as much as
and
possible,
keeping them together and figuring out figuring out what's going to break next, and trying
making sure
to
that
avoid
doesn't happen.
that. But I think what's coming is there's a couple things.
E-propulsion. Are you involved in that at all?
Yeah, well, that's what it was. So the booster is a funny system, but I think in conjunction with the light air wing and the light air foils could actually make racing in 5-6 knots of breeze, pretty interesting. So
Yeah, it's super cool. I think it's awesome that, you know, the sport is developing and very much at the forefront here at SailGP. But something I didn't think about was how you've got so many teams, so much top level feedback. Just makes the process quicker. But I guess testing is something that you have to do with every new modification, which is a long process.
Yeah, yeah. You know, before you do it 12 times, you want to get it right. But that's actually the challenge of this. You know, in a America's Cup environment, when you do something new, you just have to build one of them. Here, we have to build 12.
Soon 13.
13, I guess 13 soon.
A little bit more about, I guess, your background. When were you first sort of designing boats? Was it from a young age you were really into sailing, into boat design? What's your story? What brought you here?
Yeah, I mean, I've sailed since I was a kid, and I always loved boats, and the majority of what I know, I actually learned from designing and building the International 14 skiffs. They're little two-person carbon fiber racing boats. And when I first started building them, I didn't know how to build boats, you know.
Wow.
And so I learned about carbon composites by, you know,
just giving it a go.
myself.
Did you have a mentor? Like, I guess some people obviously want to be sailors, some people want to be involved in the behind the scenes. Did you have somebody that was teaching you?
Yeah, at the beginnings, you know, there's some older guys that were, you know, where I grew up, Seattle, there was a tradition of, in the International 14 fleet there, so that there were guys, you'd build your boats in the winter, and then the next, you know, spring you'd come out with your new boat and sail it. So there was a tradition of that there that, you know, I kind of tapped into. And, you know, the first ones I built were wood with some of the older guys. And then, you know, as we tried to make them faster, I learned about carbon composites and started building them out of carbon. And that's really a big part of how I learned.
That's awesome. I guess it's crazy to think, I guess, SailGP is at the cutting edge of technology, but, you know, from building wooden boats to now in this sort of level of technology, what a journey.
Who'd have thunk? Yeah.
And I guess for you, obviously, being a boat designer, but sailing as well, you said that you were into it from a young age. I guess I heard that you might have sailed around done some cruising around the world as well, and you've got some good stories from that.
Yeah, well, we always cruised with my family when I was a kid, but when I was 18 years old, my dad packed up the family and we sailed down to the South Pacific for a year and a half.
Awesome.
And that's actually my first experience with multi-hulls, was with the funny little sailing pros down in Polynesia. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And I also heard that you have a boat that's rudderless. So for people, is that correct?
Well, it actually has two rudders, one on either end. Yeah.
So it's like a boat that can go both ways.
Yeah.
You got some good ideas. You know what I'm gonna say?
Well, that was actually I first saw those kind of boats down in Polynesia when I was 18, and so I liked playing around with the.
I guess that kind of brings me to another question: is where do you sort of get your inspiration from? Obviously, you know, back in the day, you bring it from boats that you haven't seen before, but here you're imagining things that don't exist.
Yeah.
How do you? What is that? Like, how do you think of ideas? Do you draw it up, and think, oh, that's not going to work? Like, for every good idea, is there 10 bad ones, or what's the?
That's about right. It really is. There's, you know, a couple things that help with creativity. The first is, you know, not being afraid to be wrong, and not falling in love with your ideas, like, because like you said, most of your ideas, there's a flaw with them. So you got to be comfortable with having an idea and figuring out what's wrong with it. And if you're good at that, then when you get an idea that's really right, you kind of can spot them.
How do you work, I guess, within SailGP? Like, you're coming up with the ideas, do you then bring it to other designers? Do you bring it to more like the technical team, the athletes? Like, or is it sort of everybody? Russell Coots, I'm sure, is someone that you've worked with such a long time as well? Yeah,
it's a team effort. You know, a lot of times, you know, the sailors will feel something on the boat, and they'll say something to you that kind of ticks something in the back of your head,
like,
and you're thinking about it. It's like, oh, you know, that's something I didn't think about, that leads to an idea that, you know, where you go. So it really takes more than one person. Like it's a team effort. A lot of times I'm feeding off ideas from other people and interpreting what they what they're seeing and trying to think of ways to make it better.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, because we're sitting in front of craning right now. When you first came up with an idea of a catamaran with a wing sail, and you had to crane the boat in fully set up, that would have been a little bit wild for some people to comprehend, right?
Well, actually, that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of with these boats. The first time they put a wing on one of these new boats was the AC-45. Was a smaller boat, and the AC-72 America's Cup.
Back in 2013.
Yeah, and they didn't know how they were going to get the wings on and off the boat.
That's crazy.
And I actually, they gave me that job, to figure it out.
Cool.
So I was the guy.
Did you have any other ideas, or?
Well, there was a lot of different ways. We thought, well, maybe we'd start the boats like on their side, with the wings laid parallel. So we'd plug the wings in with the boats on their side and then tip them up.
Crazy.
But I came to the conclusion that this was the only way to do it, to lift the wing with the crane, which, nobody had tried to do and was actually kind of frightening to me.
Yeah, how nervous were you the first time?
Yeah, like what could go wrong? But I put the counterweights on the bottom of the wing, and that kind of stabilizes it, and anyway, it's worked out okay.
Yeah. It's amazing how quick the process is now. So obviously they lift the wing up, then they get this water ballast, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Then they roll the platform under, hook everything up, and then the whole boat goes in the water.
Yeah, I don't get bored of watching it.
Yeah.
It's like ballet, and they've been doing it so much now that they, it really is
streamlined.
Totally streamlined process.
I guess the other thing that has developed is we used to have to lift the crane up and put the rudders in from underneath. Was that something that you were sort of always optimizing?
No, some other guys did that, and that's a brilliant system they put in. They figured out how to put them in a cassette so they could tilt up like that, and that's
speeds up the process
seriously, and makes it way safer than it was.
My final question for you is, obviously the boat has developed so much over the last couple of years, some massive design things happening this year. Do you think in 5 years it's going to look the same, or there's going to be lots of new things within 5 years?
Yeah,
the big question.
Yeah, that's a big question. Yeah, I mean, we're wringing a lot out of these boats right now, and I think there's still some refinements that could be done. I'd love to see an intermediate set of rudder wings. Right now, our rudder wings are really optimized for the top end of the wind range and the bottom end of the wind range. And I think
middle ground. Like 3 wings, 3 rudders.
Yeah.
They're easy to change now, just like tires, right?
Yeah. After that, it would be probably a more major change, a change to the platform itself, which, that'll happen at some point. These don't have, they won't live forever.
It's high performance sports, so we're always developing, always trying something new, and who knows what the future holds. But it's cool to have somebody like you coming up with all the good ideas and talking to all the athletes and being a part of it. So thank you so much for the chat today. It was really cool, really interesting to hear where you've come from and all the involvement you've got. So I really appreciate it.
Well, it's fun talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this chat, and let me know if there's anyone on the SailGP tech site you'd like me to chat to. See you next time.